Welcome to the Cackling Jackal. My name is James, and today we're going to be talking about making custom races for your game. This is DMY Inspirations, the series where we give you stuff that you can just totally rip off and use in your home game, because we're cool like that. Today, again, as I said, we're talking about races and making custom races for your game. Often players feel a little bit restricted by the player's handbook in particular. The player's handbook has some cool races. Definitely some of those races are really awesome, but a lot of them are very typical fantasy. Things like elves and dwarves, after you've been around the ring a few times and played a lot of D&D, those can get a little bit boring, a little bit samey. So what people often turn to is either looking at other books, such as Volo's Guide to Monsters or the upcoming Mordekainen's Tome of Foes. Those have different races in them, and yeah, they're really cool, but my thoughts on Volo's in particular, Volo's Guide to Monsters, is that a lot of those races don't fit in many homebrew worlds. They do fit, but a lot of DMs kind of, don't necessarily want you to play goblin characters because goblin characters are crazy, and all that sort of thing. So what DMs often do is they turn to make different races, and sometimes it's because they want to fill a hole in their world, and they think that this race would really fit in that hole, so they create a new race for it, or they just want to get some creative juices out, give their players some more interesting options, and sort of get them into the world that way. So, how do you do it? How do you make a custom race? First thing, you need to make sure it's not way overpowered or way underpowered. Yeah, unfortunately that's what happens. You need to make sure that it's somewhat balanced, that other players are going to go, oh, that race isn't, that race gets to teleport every 6 seconds. Yeah, probably not great. You think that might be a joke, but we've had it happen. So a good way to sort of get around that issue is to base it on an existing race. So at this point, let's jump into the More Races document. So here's the More Races document by the Jackal, and this is basically 13, and you can see them all here, 13 different races that you can play as in games that I run. You can pretty much choose any of these for the most part. Some of them won't fit in certain worlds. Yeah, a lot of people are probably laughing right now looking at the Bunnyfolk and why bunnies fit into the D&D world. I think these guys are really cool. They're basically humanoid rabbits. They've got, rabbits that are bigger. They sort of stand on their hind legs. They do a lot of, they can move. They can stand. They can speak. They can do all that sort of thing. So what I've done here is, yeah, so as far as balancing, we're talking about balancing specifically. Your ability score increase is going to be a big one, where that comes from. So in this case, the Bunnyfolk get 2 to Dexterity and 1 to Charisma. 2 to Dexterity because they're very dexterous, and 1 to Charisma because they're cute as hell. But more than that, they're very social creatures. And I've sort of decided to channel that into their humanoid version. By the way, I will just say right now that in my disclaimer, I don't claim that all these races are balanced or good, but I think personally that they are interesting. And if you want to grab any of these and let your players play them, there's a download link in the description. Cool. So, 2 and 1 is usually what most races get for their ability score increase. That being said, you can play with that a little bit. Some races in the player's handbook, such as I think Mountain Dwarves, get 2 and 2. Some races from D&D stuff only get 1 and 1, or the Half Elf gets 2 of 1 and then 2 more of different abilities that they choose. You can definitely play around with that, but typically sticking with a 2 and 1 will make sure that your race isn't performing better or worse than another race. Then you get all the flavor stuff. The flavor stuff is actually really important. I recommend leaving it in. A lot of people will go, oh, well, I just want to tell you how my race works mechanically speaking and how it works in the game. But I feel like just things like age and alignment and size and all that type of thing, even though they might be very samey to some of the other races in the book, they help just sort of establish a baseline for your race. So in this case, the Bunnyfolk stand out a bit because they live shorter lives. Not too much shorter, but shorter lives. I've said Bunnyfolk in my world tend to lawful. Again, if you want to use Bunnyfolk in your world and you think that they're more chaotic, go for it. And then we start looking at speeds and things like that, mechanical advantages. So in this case, they've got a base walking speed of 30 feet. That's normal. 30 feet is average, so unless you've got a reason to make them more or less speedy, you can do that. But these guys also get a burrow speed of 10 feet. Burrow speed is kind of hard to get in D&D. There's not many ways to do it, and I thought giving it to the Bunnyfolk would be a really interesting, unique thing that they can do. Again, it's only 10 feet, and as a DM, you're going to want to sort of regulate what types of surfaces you let them burrow into and what types of surfaces they can't burrow into. But I think it's a really neat little feature of the Bunnyfolk that give them a few more options and just make them feel more bunny-like. And along with that, they get quick feet. This is probably their big ability. This could arguably be a little bit overpowered. Well, I've sort of regulated a bit. So, sort of like similar to the Tabaxi. The Tabaxi from Volo's Guide to Monsters, they get an ability where they can, in their turn, basically double their movement. The Tabaxi are broken in D&D, in my opinion. They double your movement. It's weird because can you then double your movement, dash, and then if you're a rogue with cunning action, dash again, and then you're a monk and you get movement from that, and you're a barbarian, you get movement from that. You can go very, very quickly. In my opinion, it's broken. So this one I've sort of reined in a little bit, saying that you can dash as a bonus action on each of your turns. Cool, that's pretty awesome. And then I've just put a caveat on there saying that if you dash in this way, you cannot also use your action to dash. So basically, I've restricted that, saying like, sure, you can dash on your turn as a bonus action. Very useful. You can use that to get in and out of combat really easily. You can, essentially move, dash, and then attack as your action. All I've said is that you can't move, dash, and then dash. I know, I like it. I think it just, makes it feel more tangible and makes it feel more like you're not, just zipping around the battlefield. Cool. Then we've got springy legs. So this is pretty much a flavor ability more than anything else. I definitely, if you're putting in a race that has a strong ability like quick feet, and then they get the burrow speed as well, those are pretty strong abilities. You can add in flavor abilities that sort of make them feel different but not mechanically powerful. So in this case, you double the distance you can high and long jump. In addition, when you take falling damage, you can ignore 10 feet of the distance fallen. Cool. Easy, simple, go for it. It's thematic, it works for the rabbits, it feels good. Then you've got keen hearing and smell. You gain advantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing or smell. This is the type of ability that many monsters get in the monster manual. It is quite powerful, but, if it's not vision, it might not be so powerful. So altogether, also then languages, you've got to consider how many languages they get. All races, unless you've got a reason why they shouldn't, should have common. And in this case, I've added in kinspeak because in this document, you'll notice there are quite a few races that are essentially animal humanoids. And I've said that kinspeak is a language that's known by, many anthropomorphic creatures. So, yeah. The Bunnyfolk is a great example of looking at a race. In this case, it's kind of mimicked the Tabaxi a little bit, but changed things. Mechanically, it's different to the Tabaxi, even though it has some similar abilities. And it feels very different because of the flavor abilities. So this is a race where usually you're going, okay, here's their core ability. This is what makes them different mechanically, and then the rest will do sort of flavor stuff. And yeah, I really like the Bunnyfolk. I've played one in a game, and it's a lot of fun. Let's look at something slightly different then. Let's look at something where we haven't really got a baseline. Actually, no, let's go the other direction, actually. Let's look at something where we definitely do have a baseline. So, you can see here, I've got the Duergar. Duergar should be coming out in, I believe, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but it will be in Mordekainen's Tome of Foes. But I've got a version of the Duergar here myself. Sea elves and cloud gnomes are all sub-races of dwarves, elves, and gnomes. Let's have a look at the... let's go to the gnomes. Cloud gnomes. So, the cloud gnomes are weird, and basically how I've done cloud gnomes is that they live in castles up in the top of mountains. So they live in they're sort of steampunky gnomes, different to the tinkering gnomes in the way that these guys are a bit more brawny and they specifically use steam technologies combined with a bit of magic. So, sub-races. Sub-races are really easy to hammer out because you just say, it's a sub-race of the gnome, they get all of the benefits of a base gnome as well as those below. Done. Half of the work is done for you. Then you just got to think about a few abilities, and you can generally, if you open up your player's handbook, which I don't have handy because I'm a terrible person, if you open up your player's handbook and you go to the tinkering gnomes, you can open that up and go, okay, cool, let's make abilities that are similar in power to these abilities, and then figure out how we want to change them. So in this case, these guys are weird. I'm not really sure if I'm super happy with how they are right now. I might end up changing them. But so gnomes get intelligence +2, I believe. And then these guys get strength +1, which is a bit weird, but I like weird. Then they get enduring breath. So they basically get to double the duration in which they hold their breath. That is a flavor ability. I've said that comes because they live up high in the mountains. They get not very much oxygen up in that thin atmosphere, so they are better at breathing. Go figure. Awesome. Then they've got their main ability. Well, their main two abilities, kind of. They get Mending Hands. This is very specific. It'll make a great Artificer, if you're looking at the Unearthed Arcana Artificer class. But they get the Mending cantrip. Cool. They just get that. There you go, freebie. Mending isn't that powerful a cantrip anyway. It's rarely used in the games that I've experienced, and it's actually a really cool spell. Also, they can cast Cure Wounds once per short rest, which that is quite powerful. Once a short rest, they get Cure Wounds and they get to heal someone. It's great if your party doesn't have any healers, but also I've said objects and constructs are legal targets. Objects and construct are a legal target. That's a typo. Cool, I just wrote that down so that I know to come back and fix that. So, cool. Objects and constructs are legal targets for that spell, and when you do target those types, you can cast it at second level instead of first. So basically, these guys get the ability to cure wounds, not only living creatures, but also objects and constructs. This is why they're so good at being artificers, because artificers end up getting like a mechanical pet, essentially. And these guys can heal that. Also, if you get things like a shield guardian in your group somehow, if your DM lets that happen, because that's terrible, you can heal them. Or there's a few other things that helps with. Cool. And then when you target a object or a construct, you actually get to cast it at second level, so that's pretty cool. So these guys have sort of some innate magical ability to heal and mend and fix things. You use intelligence as your spellcasting modifier for the spell. Awesome. Then they get their final ability, Technical Mind. This is quite powerful as well. It's not super powerful, but it's really cool. So because they've got such a technical mind, they get to add half of their proficiency bonus to checks made to use artisan's tools that they're not proficient in. Pretty cool. Basically means that if you're not proficient with, I don't know, smith's tools, you can sort of just pretend you're proficient in them to get half of that bonus. Which is pretty cool. I know definitely Alistair wants to try out one of these guys at some point, so I might have to let him do that. Okay, let's go back to the top. Let's see. So we talked about making a class, making a race that's baseline and sort of mimics another existing race a bit. We've talked about making a sub-race from scratch. Let's look at half dwarves next. Half dwarves, I don't know if anyone will really want to play. Is this not working as a link? Okay, sure. Half dwarves. Half dwarves, cool. So, I believe in the D&D world, reproduction between a human and a dwarf is not possible. And I've basically said that some magics and curses could cause complications of that and to cause a half dwarf to come around. I don't know how many people would want to play a half dwarf, but I've started it anyway because it's relatively easy to do. It's really easy to combine two races into a half race. You basically just got to take the benefits from some of the benefits from one and some of the benefits from other and put them together. In this case, so I've given them Constitution score, and then they get to choose one ability score to go up by 2. That's nice because humans get to choose where their ability score increases go. They either get it to everything or they get it to 2 things in a feat. So I've said, hey, you get to choose your Constitution to go up by 2 and another ability score to go up by 2. It's actually quite powerful, especially since everyone wants Constitution. But, there you go. Age, alignment, all that sort of thing. 30 feet walking speed. I decided I was tossing a coin for this one, whether to make their movement go back down to 25 and make them, the dwarf movement speed. But I decided, you know what, their legs will be a bit longer. They can move quicker. That's fine. They get the dark vision from dwarves. They also get the dwarven resilience against poisons, which is cool. And then they get skill versatility. They get proficiency in 1 skill of their choice. That's very similar to the half elf that gets that. I think they might get 2 skills. I'm not sure. And then they get common, dwarvish, and 1 other language. It's pretty baseline. Nothing stands out here, but they're very general. I can see a lot of people who were going to play humans decide to play this instead, because they get some more options and they get dark vision. I might actually rethink this. I might get someone to play test this one for me because I haven't yet. And if it does seem like it's just a better human, I might cut down that movement speed and I might alter some of this. Let's scroll back up. So, we've talked about making similar races to races that already exist. We've talked about making sub-races. And we've talked about smashing 2 races together. Let's talk about coming up with a completely different race. Golemites. We'll come to Golemites last because I've done something really weird with those that might be interesting. So let's see. I don't know why some of these are working as links, but the others aren't. Oh well. Maybe I messed up the formula, the PDF, the document. That's the word I'm looking for. Let's look at Sylvari. Sylvari, and I've said right here, I've stolen these guys from Guild Wars 2 completely. The Sylvari are a race of plant people that appear in Guild Wars 2. They have a very alien way of looking at the world, and they're very naturalists. They live in and amongst plants because they are plants themselves. Anyway, let's jump into how I've satted them out. So I've given them wisdom and charisma. I think that's pretty spot on. Wisdom, definitely. I want these guys to be suited towards being, rangers and druids. And then I've given them +1 to charisma, just because they're very communal. They're a very communal people. They know how to interact with each other pretty well. They live quite long. Blah 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 blah. Cool. So, out of the abilities they get, this is where it gets a bit interesting. So I've given them a 30 feet movement speed as average. Then I've given them plant anatomy, which means they are both considered plants and humanoids for the purpose of being targeted by spells and things like that. They have vulnerability to fire damage, and they're immune to poison damage and the poison condition. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Fire and poison are the 2 most common types of damage found in D&D, at least 5th edition. So giving them an immunity to poison is pretty darn good, but giving them vulnerability to fire is pretty rough. I thought that suits better. I was going to give them resistance to poison, but I wanted to chunk the fire in there. Make it a bit of risk going for these guys because they are quite cool. Then, control of plants. They learn the Druidcraft cantrip. Makes sense. They can also cast Entangle once per long rest. Makes sense. And at 3rd level, they get the ability to cast Bark Skin once per long rest. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know what to say to that. It works. It makes sense. They get Wisdom as their spellcasting ability. These guys make great druids, although they're kind of halfway there already. Natural Mind. You have advantage on saving throws made to resist being frightened or charmed, and gain proficiency in the nature skill. Please ignore that. Ignore that interruption. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. They get proficiency in the nature skill. Makes sense. A lot of this is pretty straightforward, and it makes a lot of sense. Then they get Healing Seed. That's kind of this one interesting thing that I wanted to give them. By the way, a lot of these stats are based on abilities that you can use in Guild Wars 2. And I think Healing Seed as well. So as an action, you can produce a small seed with the ability to heal those who consume it. It acts like a single berry from the Good Berry spell, except that it heals 1d10 hit points, and will also cure any 1 poison or disease the target is suffering from. Once you use this trait, it cannot be used for another week, and at the end of the week, any previous seed produced is no longer magical. I think it's pretty cool. It's like Good Berry, but it only lasts a week, and it will heal you for 1d10, so it's a more powerful Good Berry, essentially. But you obviously only get 1 berry. Then they get Common and Sylvan. That's pretty straightforward. Lovely. So that's Sylvari. When you're making a whole new race, you want to look at their abilities and but not only how potent are they, and how often they come up, because that's going to tell you how OP it is. If you've got, a character that has one really, really cool ability, but it almost never comes up, it's not really worth having it. So what's going to happen is, awesome. So let's scroll back up. And finally, let's look at the Golemites. So Golemites are a creation of my own. If you can see the word golem in there, that's intentional, because these guys are essentially golems that are humanoids, and they more resemble humanoids, but they're still definitely golems. So for instance, and you can see, if we go down here, yeah, you can see basically, if you read this bit, they've got a creator, a magical creator, who gives them, their bonds, ideals, and flaws, blah, 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 blah. That being said, they can be inverted. Yeah. So, once we look at the racial traits, Constitution increases by 1. You might think that why do they only get 1? That's because we're getting more later. They do not age. They share alignment with their creator. Blah, 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 blah. Constructs of... well, first of all, let's look at constructs. So Golemites do not need to breathe, eat, or drink. They do, however, need to enter a sleep-like state to conserve and refresh their energy. Basically says they don't need to breathe, eat, or drink, but they still need to take long rests. Then we look at constructs of design. Golemites are both humanoids and constructs, so they get both types, which is awesome if you've got a cloud gnome in your party. In addition, they are primarily made out of wood, stone, clay, or glass, which gives them additional racial traits as outlined below. So essentially, and then you also have, every Golemite also has a core within its head or chest. This core contains within it the brain, soul, and heart of the Golemite. Each core is constructed slightly differently by a powerful spellcaster, but the primary material used in its construction gives it additional traits outlined below. Essentially, with the Golemites, you choose 2 subclasses. So the Golemites are one race, and all Golemites get 1 constitution, and they don't need to sleep or breathe or whatever. Well, they don't need to sleep. They don't need to breathe, eat, or drink. But then you choose a body material to make your Golemite out of, whether it's clay, glass, stone, or wood. And then you choose a core material, which in this case is alexandrite, fulgurite, otherwise known as sandglass, meteorite, or obsidian. So, these Golemites are essentially formed by a powerful spellcaster, either into clay Golemites, glass Golemites, stone Golemites, or wood Golemites. And then the same spellcaster, or probably could be a different one, I guess, might make a core for that Golemite, and then put the core inside the Golemite, and then the Golemite is a thing and exists. Also, it is possible for a Golemite to have their core extracted and put into a different Golemite, which might have some interesting effects. Anyway, this one is very tough to balance. And this one is probably not balanced. I've tried to do as best I can, but having 2 subclasses is really weird. Basically, how it comes out to is your body material, so clay, glass, stone, or wood, gives you a physical stat increase, so a strength, a dex, or a con, and then your core material is going to give you a mental increase, either charisma, intelligence, or wisdom. So if we just look at the materials real quick, let's say you're making a clay Golemite. Your strength increases by 1, your walking speed's 30, and you gain resistance to acid damage. Cool. Glass, your walking speed is 40, so glass are a lot more dexterous and a lot more able to move. They get sharp edges, so whenever you grapple someone or are grappled, they take 1d6 slashing damage. Again, that's not super powerful. And then they get transparent. They never hinder anyone else's line of sight, which is kind of interesting. Depends on your DM about how they rule, how that works. But I think it's interesting. Stone. If you have a stone body, you get +1 to con, plus your 1 to your con already from just being a Golemite, so that's awesome. You're a bit slower, but when you are hit with a critical hit, you can suffer 1 level of exhaustion to reduce that attack to a normal hit. I think that's really cool. Also, I haven't limited that at all. So your DM might impose a restriction. I would, recommend a DM consider it. But if you keep getting crit hit, you can just keep taking exhaustion levels if you want. Again, I guess you are limited by the fact that if you get to 6, you die. And then they also get solid as rock. Your AC can never be less than 15 except by magical means. Pretty cool. And then finally, wood, we get your strength score increases by 1. Also, by the way, your AC can never be less than 16 except by magical means. I might need to reword that. In fact, I might write it down. Because by the rules of that, how that's written is weird. I must have been very tired when I was writing that. Anyway, it will read, your base AC is 15 and cannot be reduced except by magical means. Cool, wood. Wood is going to get your strength score increases by 1. And your base walking speed is 30 feet, so it's normal. Then you get hidden among trees. While remaining perfectly still, you're almost indistinguishable from a dead or leafless tree. You gain advantage on dexterity stealth checks to hide this way. So that's cool. It means that if you're hiding among trees, as long as you're staying still, you get advantage on stealth checks. And then they get treekin. You can cast Speak with Plants once per long rest, which is pretty cool. And then we look at the core materials. So you're going to choose either clay, glass, stone, or wood. And then you get either Alexandrite, which in this case is going to give you charisma +1, darker vision, and time awareness, which basically means you always know when it's noon, midnight, sunrise, and sunset. Fulgurite, your intelligence score increases by 1, and you have resistance to lightning damage. Yes, I know that you can combo clay and Fulgurite. Also, obsidian. You can combo 2 of those to get resistance to 2 things, but your race isn't giving you much else, is the interesting bit there. So Fulgurite means that your intelligence score increases by 1, you get resistance to lightning. Meteorite, intelligence as well, by 1. They get dark vision, and then they get from among the stars, which basically means as long as you can see the sky, you can see the stars, regardless of whether it's day or night. You also have advantage on checks to navigate and tell which direction is north by using the stars. Lovely. And then finally, obsidian, wisdom, and resistance to fire damage. So yeah, they're probably not balanced at all. They're probably way OP, because you get to sort of choose 2 things. It might take a lot of playtesting, but this is how they're going to sit for right now. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah. Other than that, if you want to check out the rest of the races in this document, you can download it in the link down below. There are definitely some interesting ones. For instance, we've got Leafings here. Leafings are basically, I can't remember if they made them small or not, but they're bat-like furred creatures, almost like a flying fox. And they basically have the ability to glide. They can't fly, but they can glide. Also, their gliding ability might need some look at as well. Panguna, they're penguin people. Also interesting, you got shadelings. Shadelings are basically humans who have spent too long, and they're not necessarily just humans. They can be other races as well, but races that have spent too long in the Shadowfell and have been corrupted by it. which is kind of cool. They get a really awesome ability that allows them to dim all lights within 100 feet of them they can see. Yeah, Dampier is a half vampire. Some really cool things in there. If you want to check out this document, there'll be a link in the description to download it and use it in your game. Do it. Feel free. Steal from me. Steal this from me. Yeah. Anyway, until then, I've been James. This has been the Cackling Jackal. This has been more races by the Jackal. We'll see you next time.